Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Raising Healthy Mothers. Today I am answering a question that came through from one of my listeners to help her out with her fussy toddler. So the question was this: how do I feed a very, very fussy toddler? My baby still eats anything we put in front of her, as her big sister did at the same age. She eats well at preschool due to herd mentality of seeing her friends eat the food, but at home she doesn't eat so well. We serve family style and put stuff on her plate, but she only chooses her safe food. It feels a waste to create a meal she won't touch, but I feel guilty we aren't feeding the baby well as a result. I work full time now, so I don't have as much time to cook as I did when my toddler was a baby when I worked part time. I used to meal prep and have a freezer full, but this isn't happening so much right now. Okay, so first of all, I just want to really recognize and acknowledge that guilt of the second child just not getting as much of a range of food as you would like. This is exactly the same as me, as us, because my nearly 6-year-old, is still a very fussy eater. And of course, my toddler, who's now 3, does tend to get a much narrower range of food than I would like, and is eating food that I probably wouldn't have introduced her to if I didn't also have a very fussy older child. So I just want to say, I really do recognize that guilt and how hard that is. As a starting point, I want to say the fact that your toddler seems to eat pretty well at preschool is a really good sign, because this just sort of suggests that there isn't an underlying sensory issue that could make this a bit of a harder kind of thing to resolve. Okay, so if she's eating quite a good range of food somewhere else, even if it's not at home, then that's a really good sign. And it also means that you can feel quite reassured that actually she is getting a good varied meal quite a few days of the week. I'm assuming she's there 5 days a week because you work full time. So 5 days a week, she is getting at least one pretty varied meal. And we know, as I said, that it's not, her fussiness potentially isn't due to an underlying sensory issue, and that's a really positive thing. I would actually say that maybe because, she's eating relatively well at school, that you can maybe relax a bit and allow her to feel safe at home to dictate how her appetite is. Let her feel safe that she can listen to her body at home. There might be a sort of pressure at school to kind of eat it all up or clear your plate or not be allowed to go and do X until you've eaten Y. And although, ideally that isn't really happening at school, that she's just eating it, off her own back, you just want to make sure that there isn't that sort of pressure at home, that she is allowed to just listen to her body. And you can literally say that to her, you can listen to your body here, you can eat until you've had enough. Now, you mentioned that you're already serving the food family style, which is great. And I would say just keep doing what you're doing. Cook the food that you want to eat and serve some things on the side that she will eat. I think you did give me a list of food, which I didn't read out, but you gave me a list of food. And for the most part, it's relatively well-rounded. There is some carbs, there's some protein, there is, a range of food that she is able to eat. In my Fussy Toddler workshop that I ran, I mentioned that most most parents of very fussy eaters will write a list of all the food that they know their child will eat. And then another mum of another fussy eater will be like, oh my goodness, I really wish my child would eat all those things or eat that thing, or, So whatever food your child does or doesn't eat, there is another mum out there who thinks their child is more fussy than yours. Honestly, trust me, because I am that mum who's always looking at other people's fussy eaters and go, well, yeah, but mine doesn't eat that. What I would suggest when it comes to kind of eating family style is to allow yourself to plan 1 to 2 meals a week that are just for you, that is for your palate. That might be where you might maybe up the spice or cook food that that they just have no interest in even trying. And just choose those days to make really easy, simple meals for them, whether that is cheese on toast or eggs and soldiers, beans on toast, whatever you can think of as like your sort of stereotype nursery food. Those are the days to have them, okay? Or even if they don't eat that, maybe it's pizza or pasta or whatever is the simple meals that they're going to eat. Maybe you can choose to serve those meals to your children earlier in the day, and then you can have a really lovely, relaxed meal with your partner just the two of you on those days when you plan those meals that are just for you. Now, I'd love to say that we do this, but we don't really do this because my children tend to have quite a late bedtime. They're usually not kind of in bed until 8 o'clock, or possibly, sometimes even later, which means that by the time I'm up and got to cook the meal, then it just gets too late, and I try not to eat after 9 o'clock. So I don't really tend to do this very often, but I do often have meals a couple of times a week that is generally just for me and my husband, like our palates, what we want to eat. And we will either give them the option to share it or give them something completely different that I know they will eat and just not really hassle us. Because I think it's okay to say that a couple of times a week, I want to eat what I want to eat. I'm not going to just pander to what you eat all the time. And that's your opportunity to make sure that the baby then gets something that's a bit more varied as well. So they can have, try different things that you might not have kind of thought to cook because you had to bear the toddler in mind. And then equally allow there to be some meals that are just for her, the pizza, the pasta, say on a day when you might make her pasta, make a sauce for yourself. My son will only eat plain pasta, maybe with a bit of butter and olive oil, and we'll grate some cheese on top, but otherwise he will not tolerate sauce with it. Well, I might make a sauce for myself, and I will give him a little bit of the sauce in a little cup or in a little like a little dish, and he gets to choose whether he puts it on. Well, of course he chooses not to, but the point is that it's there, that the option is there. And then what I did for my toddler, my 3-year-old, who is starting to become quite fussy, I stirred a small amount of the sauce in because I knew that she wasn't quite as fussy as he is. But if I sort of gave her a huge bowl of pasta that had quite a lot of sauce in it, she would just reject it because she'd rather have the plain one that he is having. And again, I gave her a small cup of the sauce to add on if she wanted to. So just as much as you have the right to have food that you choose, that you want to eat, so does she. She gets to have a couple of nights a week where it's just no pressure. Another tip is to make her feel a part of it. So if you do meal planning, or even if you don't, I suggest you start this. Let her choose a couple of meals that are for her. Let her say, okay, on Monday and Wednesday, these are your days. What would you like to put on the menu for that week? It might be the same every week. She might say pasta every day. She might say pizza every day, but that's okay. That's her prerogative. And you can work around that. Can you make a pizza for her and then have another pizza for you and your partner and just add your own favorite toppings on? And equally with the pasta, same idea as before, make a saucy one for yourself and make it however she likes for herself. Let her be a part of it. Let her feel that she has some choice in the matter. But equally, let her know that on these other days, you've chosen meals for you. And you can talk to her about what gets you excited about it, why you've chosen those meals. Oh, that's the sort of meal I used to love cooking before you came along, or I used to eat that all the time with your dad before you came along. Just kind of let her know that you are a person too. You are a person with preferences too. And that you are part of the family and have a right to make a choice for yourself. And you can also talk to her about the fact that you will make sure that there is something on the side for her, something that she will eat. And you can always say, if you would like to try the food that I'm making for us, you're welcome to. It's always there as an option. And then equally, again, choose, put something on the meal plan, on the menu that that your partner is going to like, that the baby likes. Let her know that everyone in the family has different preferences and different likes and dislikes. Okay. And in some ways that is going to help take that pressure, take that spotlight off her, stop labeling her as this fussy eater, and instead make her realize that she is part of a bigger team, a bigger family, where everyone has things that they like and don't like, because we all do, right? We all have things that we love eating. There's some things that we kind of don't mind eating. There's some things that we really don't like eating. The difference is, because you're the parent, you're the one who's actually cooking the food, you get to choose which of those things you don't, but she doesn't. And so giving her that opportunity to make her own choice and let her know that other people are going to make their own choice too, it's going to help her understand that she's part of a wider community in this family. And also it helps to it helps her to anticipate, okay, maybe on this day, after swimming, that's the meal that I got to choose. Oh, and tomorrow is mummy's choice. And, Wednesday is baby's choice. And Thursdays is daddy's choice. Those kind of things. It's going to really help her understand what's coming up. And it might be that on those days when it's not her choice, she's going to have a harder time. But again, if she can anticipate that, then she might not make as much of a fuss about it, if she does make a fuss at all. You mentioned in your message that she often, like, one of her sort of favorites is where, she'll always eat a fruit, a yogurt, a chocolate, or a lolly. You didn't mention whether you kind of keep that for later or have it as like a dessert. But my tip here is to try and serve it together as part of the meal. So, serve your fruit, your yogurt, whatever it is, as part of the meal on the same plate. If you have one of those plates that has divisions on, or just have a little side plate with, a piece of chocolate or whatever on. And the idea here is just to avoid making it something that is a bit special, that they have to wait for, kind of, enforce that sort of delayed gratification. Just make it a part of the meal, and she gets to choose when she eats it. So she might eat it first. She probably will eat it first for the first few times. Or she might save it for last, after a while, when she realizes that once it's gone, it's gone. Make it a small enough portion that she's not going to fill up on it, so that, if you give her like a huge, chocolate muffin, then she might eat that and then not want to eat anything else on the plate. You want to give her a small enough portion that she understands that it's there. And that it's an enjoyable part of the meal, but it's just part of the meal. It's not something kind of big and exciting and special that she has to finish her meal for. The aim is just to keep pressure off this sort of eating of, trying to get more varied food into her diet. And also just not pedestal that some food is more exciting and more fun than others. She already thinks that. She already knows that chocolate is way more fun than eating broccoli. But just to kind of neutralize the idea that this is better than the other. You also mentioned that you used to meal prep and batch cook. So and you said that now that just isn't happening because you work full time. But I do wonder whether you might be able to set aside a couple of hours just once a month to batch prepare some meals. Maybe not cook the whole meal from start to finish, but just prepare them. So you could do slow cooker dump bags. Taming Twins is a really good resource for this. This is where you put like a whole load of raw ingredients into a bag and just put it in the freezer, and then all you have to do is get it out, defrost it overnight, dump it in the slow cooker so it cooks all day while you're out at work, and then it's ready to eat. Could you maybe make a big batch of soup to put in the freezer to portion out into baby-sized portions if you want? And then there's always something for the baby to eat when the toddler is maybe just having toast for that day, for example. That that you can have a small portion of soup for your baby as well. Again, I don't want this to feel like, oh, I've got to batch prepare like a whole month's worth of meals. I'm just suggesting, could you just come back to it, just spend a couple of hours once a month doing it, just filling up that freezer again, and just maybe helping to take that pressure off you a little bit, that you're never able to offer the baby something different. And then my really key top tip when it comes to anything fussy eating is to try and keep the atmosphere around food and eating really positive, pressure-free, and just light. Try and take the stress around mealtimes away. Make it fun, make it's perfectly okay to create play out of your food. I talk about playing with food quite a lot in my Fussy Eater workshop. So try and talk about food in a really positive way. So talk about the colour. Children love talking about colour. It's a great way as a toddler, especially, to kind of talk about colour and, test her, make sure that she knows her colours. And, you could say like, oh, what do you think it's going to taste like? What do you think it's going to feel like in your mouth? Talk about the texture, talk about the smell, talk about how it might change when you cook something, how carrots are crunchy when they're raw, but when you cook them, they go soft and they taste a bit different. And what happens if you add some butter to that carrot? And it's all about creating keeping that discussion around food. Talk about food, because that's a great way to expose them to the idea that food can be delicious and interesting to talk about, but again in that non-pressured way of you must eat your food. Try and talk about all the different senses that she can use to explore the food. So this is another way you can use all of your senses to as an exposure to food. So you can explain the connection between, if you think something smells nice, then it's probably going to taste nice. And when you talk about that, it's going to kind of put a little seed of an idea in their mind. And what's happened with my son, is that he's often kind of walked into the kitchen and said, oh, that smells nice. And I said, well, remember, I say that if something smells nice, you're probably going to like the taste of it. So maybe when it comes to dinner time, you might try it. And I have definitely found that he's more likely to try something if he has thought that it smells nice when I was cooking it. And I allow him, I say to him, give it a sniff, give it a lick, and then decide whether or not you want to take a bite. And just allowing him to understand that he has these different senses. When he touches it, he can feel what it feels like. When he licks it, he gets a little taste of it. When he smells it, he can smell it. So using all of his senses to explore it. And it might be that all he does is touch it one day. That's a brilliant way to expose them to something that they've never tried before. Maybe the next day he might smell it. The next time he might lick it, and it's okay. It's very step by step. And it does take quite a lot of exposure to try something new, but keep it positive, keep it pressure free. Don't try and go, oh, you've got to try it. Although I am quite strict around saying, like he might say, oh, I don't like that. And I say, well, you don't know that you don't like it until you've tried it. So you can't say you don't like it because you've not tried it, but you can say, I don't feel like trying it today. That's perfectly fine. We all know sometimes we're more willing to be more adventurous than others, and that's perfectly fine for our children too. Be positive about the food on your plate. Not in a fake way, but in a, oh my goodness, this is my favorite meal. I used to love eating this. I've really enjoyed cooking this. Or, oh, I really love eating broccoli dipped in garlic mayonnaise, for example. Or I love it when there's melted butter on my broccoli. Or just talk about your food on your plate. Enjoy your food and say it out loud, what it is you're enjoying about it. Because again, you're letting them know that food is a sensory experience, and it's smell, it's taste, it's how it feels in the mouth. It's all really important. Know that it's okay that in this season of her life, her palate is limited. It's maybe it's a survival mechanism, right, for toddlers to be really fussy, because they are going out, they're being away from the comfort of home, they're exploring the world around them, and they need to know that they're going to be safe by what they put in their mouth. So if they know that the crackers are going to taste the very same from the very first to the very last, they know that's a safe food. If sometimes a blueberry is sour and sometimes it's squishy and sometimes it's, really sweet, it's really unpredictable, and that can be very difficult if you know that primitively all they want to do is survive. So, allow the option to explore to be there, but don't panic. It's not probably going to be forever. As I said, we know that's probably not a sensory thing because she will eat her food at preschool. So allow the opportunity to explore and to listen to her body to be there at home. And also know that it's totally okay to have days or even a whole week or more where you keep those options basic for her. Toast, cheese on toast, beans on toast, scrambled eggs, porridge, pizza, pasta. It's okay to take a break when things are getting too much and come back to it at a later date when you've got the headspace. This is true of anything in parenting. Sleep, exercise, anything, any transition or change that you want to make for yourself. Sometimes it can't happen until you're in the right headspace. And sometimes that just, you need to take the pressure off for yourself for a little while and then come back to it when you feel a bit more ready. So I have mentioned my Fussy Eater workshop a couple of times. I cover so much more. It's a whole hour long, and I cover so much more about it with really practical tips to increase exposure, reduce the pressure at mealtimes, and it just really give you a really great starting point to help keep the positive atmosphere around eating, take the pressure off. So I've shared the link to the workshop in the show notes, so you can head over there to read more and purchase it. I've really loved answering this question. So if you have a dilemma or a question around nutrition that you'd like me to answer on the podcast, I'd love to know it. Email me on tasha@tashadecruz.com, or you can message me on Instagram. I'm at tashadecruz, and I would love to answer your question on the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week.